Ladies and gentlemen, we are back, as you could tell, and joining us now is our friend Ron Christie, columnist for the Daily Beast, and of course, special assistant to former President George W. Bush. Hello, Ron.
Hello, Steve. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Always great to talk to you. Okay, this attack on GW and Dick Cheney over the enhanced interrogation practices, which we had Mark Thiessen on. He wrote a book on all the good it did. We had Mary Matlin on yesterday, and Mary Matlin, who was an assistant counsel to Dick Cheney, said that Dianne Feinstein is beyond dishonest. She is a liar because she knew with the others about all of these things because she was there when Cheney would brief them, and she knows that all of the interrogation tactics are put together saved lives and led to breakthroughs. So what's going on here?
Well, I think first and foremost, Steve, this is all about election year politics, and it's all about the Democrats trying to find a boogeyman, in this case, President George W. Bush and his Vice President Dick Cheney, in the attempt to scare the electorate in advance of a blowout, which I think is coming in the United States Senate for the Democrats. Look, as Mary Matlin knows, as my friend Mark Thiessen knows, and I know for having been in the White House, intelligence is disseminated from the executive branch, not only to the elected leadership, which is, of course, the Speaker and the Majority Whip and the Majority Leader and whatnot, but also to the individuals who are on the Intelligence Committee. Senator Feinstein, for her to come out and to have a cherry-picked report where she didn't interview any director of the CIA, she didn't interview anyone involved with the enhanced interrogation techniques, looks like what it is, which is a smear job, and I think it's disgraceful and it's disgusting.
Yeah, and you're right. It's all about politics. That and almost everything else they're doing, the Koch brothers and you name it. But we've been there and done that with this whole debate. And unfortunately, the President of the United States not only did away with the CIA interrogation techniques when he took office, but also made them public. And in an attempt to to shame us in some way. But again, him saying and Feinstein saying and all of the rest of them saying that this led to nothing flies in the face. I mean, even Brennan and even the former head of the CIA, they're coming forward and they're saying, no, this did. I mean, Brennan can't do much because he's caught between a rock and a hard place with the Obama policy on this. But they've acknowledged that this worked.
Well, of course they have, because it did work. I mean, the fact of the matter is that these enhanced interrogation techniques not only prevented acts of terror here in the United States, there are indications that we're also able to prevent acts of terror abroad with our allies. The fact of the matter is that the administration can try to whitewash away a very credible threat that still remains in this country and around the world by terrorists who are loath to our way of life, our symbols of democracy and freedom, and will do anything to strike at our hearts and strike really at our cultural centers. And so for this administration to sort of bury its head in the sand and pretend these threats don't exist while also excoriating the previous administration who did yeoman's work to make sure another 9/11 attack didn't take place again, I think is just a disgrace.
And of course, Ron, the media. The media, which tells you there's no scandal with the IRS, there's no scandal with Benghazi, there's no scandal with anything. But at first, chance of bringing up Bush and Cheney, once again, making them the boogeymen, as you alluded to, for the forthcoming election, they jump at it, and they will become preoccupied with this and hammer it home from the left point of view.
Well, of course they will. And again, I think that the most disgraceful aspect of what Senator Feinstein is doing, or I should say her staff is doing, is now they're leaking elements of their report out. And they're trying to gin up, which, of course, the media is all too obedient to do, interest, as you've said, in the papers and in the news broadcasts. But what does this do about keeping America safe and making us safer as a nation? Nothing. These folks, again, want to talk about methods and means of how we've gathered intelligence, how we've used intelligence, and how we've used our interrogation techniques to safeguard the American. The Democrats do these sorts of things, Steve. They're going to get a little bit better insight of how does America look for us? How does America try to detect what we're up to? And it leaves us in a more vulnerable position.
Yeah, at a time when the president himself said something I don't think he ever should have said, that his biggest fear is a nuclear bomb going off in Manhattan, which doesn't make me feel too secure. So despite the fact that them claiming that the war on terror is over, if that's his biggest fear and that's what he's concerned about, certainly even he knows it's not. Let's talk a little bit about the attack. I call it, not that I call it, but Bush derangement syndrome is alive and well. It may go away for a little bit. There's no cure, and it comes back, and it's back in full bloom in the case of some. And a writer named Jonathan Jones, he's with The Guardian, and he wrote a piece, George Bush's paintings, This is the Art of Forrest Gump. And he just trashed America. George Bush saying that this is what you might find in one of those ritzy Salvation Army stores for people that would buy and laugh at. Just went nuts. Now, you've seen the artwork up close. I want to put on the screen, and I'm going to do a segment on the Gimme 5, which is later in the next hour, where I go in depth and show a lot of the, I think 7 or 8 of the portraits that George Bush has done. But here on the screen, we're putting up the Vladimir Putin one side by side with a picture of Vladimir Putin. And I got to tell you, he's got talent. He's got a unique style. I can't draw a straight line, and I venture to say that Jonathan Jones can't either.
Well, I tell you, Steve, I'm right there with you. I can barely read my own signature when I sign it on a check. Look, President George W. Bush embodies a lot of what we would call grace and dignity and humility. And I think what you've seen in these portraits is that he tried to offer the American people his perceptions of many world leaders that he's met up close. There's one of Angela Merkel. There's one of Putin you mentioned. There's several other world leaders.
Yeah, you got Karzai, and you got Maliki, and you got Singh, and and even his own dad. Even his own dad, and I think it's really a reflection on how the former president saw some of these folks who were close allies. Some of these folks were a little bit on the adversarial side of things. But it also shows you a president who is very comfortable with himself. I mean, I am biased, of course. I worked for the former president and the former Vice President Dick Cheney. But having seen President Bush in person a few months ago, he just seems so relaxed, and he seems very secure and serene with where he is, not only in history, but with his presidency. And I think as time goes by, Steve, I think the American people, we've already seen President Bush's approval rating is now higher than President. A very difficult time for America in the era of terrorism, and he kept us safe. And I just think that these portraits of world leaders give yet another insight into how this man thinks. Yeah, and I thought he did a pretty good one that he gave to Jay Leno as well, of Jay Leno. That was a very nice portrait as well. All right, I want to play you something. We only have a couple of minutes left. This is Jeb Bush. This is cut 16.
But the way I look at this, and this is not, I'm going to say this and it'll be on tape, and so be it. The way I look at this is someone who comes to our country because they couldn't come legally. They come to our country because their families, a dad who loved their children was worried that their children didn't have food on the table. And they, wanted to make sure their family was intact. And they crossed the border because they had no other means to work, to be able to provide for their family. Yes, they broke the law, but it's not a felony. It's kind of it's an act of love. It's an act of commitment to your family.
All right, what's that going to do to his presidential chances?
Pretty much put a torpedo right in the bow of that boat. Look, I have the utmost respect for Governor Bush. I do. He's flat wrong on this issue. We're not merely talking about people coming here out of an act of love. We're also talking about terrorists who come into our country over the border. We're talking about drug smugglers. We're talking about all sorts of really evil criminal activity, Governor Bush. And the fact that you seem to equate people coming over and breaking our rules of entry as some sort of act of compassion and love is one I just strenuously disagree with.
Yeah, not to mention you could apply that to people robbing a bank or a grocery store because their kids are hungry. I mean, where would you draw the line?
Where are you going to draw the line?
Yeah.
Now, hopefully this doesn't get me kicked off President Bush's Christmas card list, Steve.
I hope not, Ron. I hope not. I'll put you on mine if that should happen. You go on mine anyway. Not that I have one. Thank you, Ron Christie, ladies and gentlemen, former advisor to President George W. Bush. Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax Television.